Hey, what's up you guys? Welcome back to the channel. I appreciate you joining. And today we're going to be continuing a series called Tips from a Recruiter, where I'll navigate you through the hiring process. Now, if you tuned in last week, I did have a video just helping you build a more effective resume. So you might be wondering, now that my resume is submitted and I get a call from a recruiter to interview, what's the next step? Don't worry at all, I got you. Today we're going to be going over how to prepare for a behavioral interview with really just a couple of basic techniques that'll give you confidence in going to meet with the hiring team. So without further ado, let's get right into it.
On my own, I've been on my own little journey.
All right, so let's be honest, everyone. Interviews are extremely awkward. And this coming from a recruiter where I spend most of my day interviewing candidates and also preparing candidates for interviews with my hiring teams. It is not the most natural thing whatsoever. And so the goal of today's video is to give you some tools so you can ease that anxiety when you're going in to meet with a group of complete strangers. So I'm gonna start off with a few simple tips that you can follow by easing the anxiety of the unknown. Then we're gonna get into one simple but very beneficial technique that'll help you in acing that behavioral round interview. So two really quick tips that will help the flow of any conversation that you might have with the recruiter or hiring manager. Number one is just go through your resume and make sure that you can speak to each specific area, whether that's what you have listed in the skills section, your experience that you laid out for each particular company, or educational background. The next thing that I would recommend is, if you've been given a list of names of the individuals who you'll be meeting with throughout the interview, I would go into LinkedIn and look up their specific profiles, just in case you might have something in common from their background that you see. Maybe you all share a mutual connection or attended the same school or associations. Really just anything that can help break the ice or ease that anxiety going in to meet with these team members. And also, depending on your situation, if you have a point of contact that you have been speaking with up to the point of the interview being scheduled, don't be afraid to ask them for any information that they can provide or insights that they can give you on what to expect throughout that particular interview. All right, so before we get into the actual technique, I really just wanted to break down for everybody the structure and format of interviews that I've seen that are most common in the industry now. Most hiring teams do want to assess a couple of different areas. One is going to be the behavioral competencies, and another will be the technical competencies. And for the technical side, I will cover that in my next video of how to prepare for a technical interview. But focusing on the behavioral competencies, the main technique that I use to prepare all of my candidates for these types of discussions is a methodology called STAR. Now, STAR is an acronym for situation, task, action, and result. And essentially with most companies, they want to really understand how somebody thinks and how they approach certain problems to see if that's going to be a good fit within the way that they generally work. And I'll say throughout all of my years of working with different candidates, preparing them for interviews, and then getting feedback on those interviews, in a lot of cases, if a candidate does not make it past this step, it's because they did not provide enough information for the interviewer to understand their thought process and the experience that they've had previously. So really what the STAR method does is it remedies that to make sure that you can provide the interview with enough information in that meeting to satisfy what they're looking for. So let's break down exactly what STAR is and how it can help you to formulate all of your responses. And when I say behavioral interview, these are generally specific types of questions that are meant to draw information from the candidate about their unique experience and approaches to different scenarios. So as an example of what a behavioral question might look like, it would generally start off with, tell me about a time when. So as an example, the question could be, tell me about a time when you had a tight deadline to meet and how did you respond to that? So with that, it's really easy to provide a response that's not extremely detailed and does not give the interviewer a lot of information to understand how you think and how you approach things. I've seen it happen many times before. So let's give an example answer. Let's say for an unprepared candidate, the answer might be something like, yes, there was a project at work that my manager passed to me. I had a couple weeks to complete it. I didn't have all the information I needed, so I had to ask a few different team members. We worked some long hours to get it done, but we were able to accomplish it in time. So with that, as you can see, I did answer the question, But for the interviewer, it doesn't really give a lot of data points on how I approached the specific situation or a lot of details around what action I took. So let's go ahead and break down even further the STAR methodology and how this can improve the responses to these types of questions. Now first, let's talk about situation. Now this is merely just you describing how a particular job or project came about, what was the history or details behind that. So in this particular example, it would just be describing the backstory as to how that project came to be. Next, we're going to talk about task. This is just describing your specific responsibility for that project when it was passed along to you. And again, in this example, it would be completing the project within a tight deadline. Next would be the action. So the action is talking about the steps that you took or challenges that you were able to overcome for this particular project. So here you want to make certain to reference things that you did as an individual. So instead of speaking about the team or we, you want to make sure to talk specifically about what you did, saying I completed this, I took this step, I made this action. And then lastly would be the result. And this is just you describing the outcome of this entire project. Now, keeping this rule of thumb in mind, this is really going to help you to formulate your responses in a very organized manner to provide enough detail to that interviewer or to that hiring team member. So of course, without knowing in advance what the interview team is going to ask, you'll be able to benefit from preparing a few different scenarios from the jobs that you've held previously. So one way to do this is to look at the job description, look at the qualifications and the skills required. Based off that, you can make a list to determine what types of scenarios or stories or examples that you would like to bring up that relate to that job. Once you've come up with those examples, another really helpful practice is to write them down. This really helps keep the details of all of your examples fresh in your mind. So once asked those questions, you're able to go into detail without hesitation. And the last helpful tip that I'll say is you can go into Google and type in commonly used behavioral interview questions. That'll give you some really good examples. That'll get your mind on the right track to start thinking of the types of examples and scenarios that you'd like to provide in your meeting with the hiring team. So finally, let's talk about what a detailed response will look like to one of these styles of questions. So again, going back to our example, tell me about a time when you had to complete a task with a tight deadline. A response using the STAR method would sound something like this. So back at XYZ company, we're working on a project to transfer data from one database to another. During this project, the lead went on sick leave and the manager assigned me the task to complete the data transfer. By the time I took it over, we only had 2 weeks remaining to deliver this project for one of our main clients. So I started first with looking into the documentation of what pieces of the project were already completed and what items were still pending. I then broke down the remainder of that work into a few different sections and assigned it to myself and a couple of different team members. I set up daily team huddles so we could update each other on progress and stay on track. So as a result, I was able to complete the project 2 days ahead of schedule. Perfect. So with those types of responses, that gives the interviewer enough information to understand how you think and how you approach certain problems. And keeping the STAR format in mind as you respond to these types of questions will definitely set you up for success while you're navigating the hiring process. All right, everybody, thanks so much for sticking through the end of this video. I really appreciate you. If you find this information helpful, please like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. I will have more episodes coming for tips from a recruiter, and so I definitely don't want you to miss out on anything. Hey, y'all stay safe out there, and I'll catch you on the next one.